Okay. There's a lot to say tonight, but I want to jump right into what I don't want to not say tonight. And then, if there's time later, we could talk weiter. But I want to focus in. Some of what I'm going to say in this binyan that I want to share with you. Some of you are familiar with pieces of it because we've built these pieces together before. But I want to kind of bring together Chumash Bereshis with this in a way that we've never done before. Okay? And that is to extend the conversation that we've had in various parshas, to extend it into Parshas Vayechi. Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef, "Va'ani nosati lecha Shechem achad al achecha, mem ches chaf beis." I'm giving you a chelek echad yisera al achecha. I'm giving you a chelek more than your brothers. This chelek that I'm giving you, asher lokachti miyad ha'emoiri becharbi ubekashti. I took it from the Amoiri with my sword and my bow. Okay, Rashi, the Targum famously says, "B'tzloisi u'bibausi," with my avoda. Asher lokachti miyato emoiri. Rashi says that there was milchama, and Yaakov took clay milchama to protect this Shechem Echad that he was giving to Yosef HaTzadik. Okay. Now, this Shechem Echad, this extra chelik that he was giving Yosef HaTzadik, Rashi says Shechem Mamish. This is the city of Shechem. The city of Shechem was granted to Yosef HaTzadik. In fact, the second to last pasuk in Sefer Yeshua reports that that's where Yosef HaTzadik was buried. Yosef HaTzadik was buried in Shechem, which Yaakov Avinu gave him at this time in Parshas Vayechi. And Yaakov Avinu says, "Asher lokachti miyado Emoiri," that I took from the Emoiri. So Rashi brings a medrash that says miyad Esav. I was lokachti miyado Emoiri, that I took it from Esav. Why is Esav called Emoiri? Two pshatim. Rashi says one is that he acted like an Emoiri, she'asa ma'isa Emoiri. Davar acher shahayatzad aviv beimrei piv, that he would trap his father with his amira, with his dibur, the way he spoke to his father. Kitzayid befiv. Rabbi say, this Shechem Echad al achecha, when did Yaakov Avinu acquire it? So, if you look at the second to last pasuk in Sefer Yeshua, it says that Yosef was buried in Shechem, in the field Asher Kona Avram, that Avram bought from Chamor, B'meya Kesita. If you remember, Yaakov Avinu made a purchase in Parshas Vayishlach. Yaakov Avinu made a purchase, Vayiken es Chelkas HaSadeh, and that Sadeh was what Yaakov purchased, and that was the Shechem, the Makom of Shechem that Yosef HaTzadik was buried. It says Mefurish, and again you could take a look at it, the second to last pasuk in Sefer Yeshua, and that Yaakov Avinu bought. Yaakov Avinu bought in Parshas Vayishlach. So could somebody explain to me what it means that Asher Lokachti Miyado Amori means he took it from Esav? At this time, that Yaakov Avinu bought a field, Miyad B'nei Chamor Avi Shechem B'meya Kesita, Yaakov Avinu Esav was long gone. The interactions with Esav was over. There was no more interaction with Esav for years to come, until he's trying to stop them from burying Yaakov in Parshas Vayechi. But at that time, there was no Esav. So what is the pshat? Rashi brings a medrash. What is the pshat? Asher lokachti miyado emoiri b'charbi uvakashti. It's pshat historically not true. Question. And Im Kain, whatever the pshat is, why is this the only place in the Torah that Esav is called a Meiri because he was tzad of be'imrei piv? Why is that? Means that something that it's Naigeya here. This that he was tzad of be'imrei piv is Naigeya here. Last week's parsha, which I wasn't here Shabbos, I didn't have a chance to share Divrei Torah, and on last Tuesday I was recovering from the flu. So, although we had studim to learn, but Rabbi Yosef protected me and told me to stay in bed. But in last week's parsha, a fascinating thing. Yosef HaTzadik tells the brothers to tell Paroi that Royet Tzayin Hayu Avodecha Min Ureinu Va'ad Ata. That they were Royet Tzayin. Why did Yosef instruct the brothers to tell Yaakov that they're Royet Tzayin? So it's beforish in the Psukim because the Mitzrayim distanced themselves from Royet Tzayin, and Yosef wanted the Bnei Yisrael to be able to live separately, Be'eretz Goshen. So this was his trick, to be able to live separately, was that he came up with a plan. They connived together. It was a strategy that they'll say that they're Royet Tzayin, and therefore they'll be able to live Be'eretz Goshen. But that's not good enough for us. Because when the Torah records something, it's not just, Torah doesn't need to record the trick that Yosef came up with, that they should be able to be Be'eretz Goshen. We don't need that. It's very, very, it would be fine if the Torah said that Yosef arranged that it should be Be'eretz Goshen. So if the Torah shares with us that the way that Yosef HaTzadik arranged it was by telling the Shvatim that they should tell Paroi that they're Royet Tzayin, that means that it's chashuv for us to know that plan, that Yosef was kaveya his brothers to be Royet Tzayin. And we have to understand why. Now this back and forth, are the Bnei Yisrael shepherds or are they farmers, right? That's the two tzadim here, right? Are they shepherds or are they farmers? So we've learned that it's not the first time that there's been a conversation of shepherds or farmers. Haloi, when Yaakov Avinu came out from the base Lavan and he sent Esav a message saying Im Lavan Garti va'echar ad ota va'hili shor v'chamor. So Yaakov, Rashi says, was telling Esav, you're angry at me because our father gave me a bracha. What was that bracha? Mitala shamayim umishmanei haaretz. I don't have aretz. It didn't happen. Don't be so upset with me. It never happened. Vayhili shor v'chamar. I'm a shepherd, not a farmer. That's what he went to Esav with, which needs a beer. Stavi threw his father under the bus. The bracha wasn't mekuyim. What was this? What was he trying to say? And then he meets with Yaakov, and he meets with Esav, and after the meeting with Esav leaves. The very first move that Yaakov Avinu makes after he meets with Esav, Vayiken es chelkas hasada, he buys land. Halei davaru. Right, that was his thing to Esav. I don't have land. Then he meets with Esav. Esav goes his own merry way. Yaakov, now we're going to buy land. Vayiken es chelkas hasada. Medar Farstein, what's going on here? What's going on here? So to understand this, as we've done in the past, but it's Kedaya Chazara, let's go back to the first farmer and shepherd. The first farmer and shepherd is Cain and Hevel. It's Cain and Hevel. Cain and Hevel break up the two professions that are negeya in that time. Hevel is a royet tzayin, and Cain is an oved adam. Hevel is a royet tzayin, zokt Rashi, that Hevel kept away from the Adama. It wasn't stam. Hevel Dafka didn't want to be an oved Adama because the Bainish Shalom had said in Parashas Bereshis, Arura ha'adama ba'avurecha, there was a klala on the Adama. So Hevel removed himself from from being Isaac, from being metapel, as much as possible. It's true, Gemara and Shabbos, if behemoths are gidulei karka or not, but for it, they're a little bit removed from the karka. It's an Isaac that's a little bit removed. Hagam, they're dependent on the karka, but it's a little bit removed from the karka. So Hevel wanted to be Isaac, not in the Adama. Rashi doesn't say why Cain chose yes to be Ovid Adama. And Bechlal, we see in the names Cain and Hevel that Hevel is a name that means Ruach, Ruchnius, and Cain is Konani, is a lashon of Kinyan. So Weistais, what's happening over here is that there's a mahalach in understanding the role of the Oived Hashem in this world. It's a global important thing to know, as we'll see. It's globally important to know to understand the world. It's globally important to know to understand Klal Yisrael. And hopefully we'll have a chance to clarify. It's important to know to be able to be kovei our own Avodas Hashem. There are two elements to Avodas Hashem. There's an element of enveloping oneself completely in an olam ruchni, insulating and isolating oneself from a world that could distract and pull down, and being completely, what we call b'dalet amis shel halacha, to be completely wrapped in an olam ruchni in order to be able to, in the most Taira Oifen, to be able to clarify the Ratzon Hashem. That's one necessity in this world. There's another necessity in this world, because for that alone, we didn't need to be in Olam Hazeh. The other necessity in this world is that the Rabbi Sonnenschein created a world where his presence is not shown, right? With his Hester Panim, with a Hashamayim on Misaprim Kavod Kael, but on the Oretz, the presence of Hashem is not clear. And there's a role for the Eved Hashem. Our job as Avdei Hashem is to spread an awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we find Avram Avinu did, right? Elokei Hashamayim ve'elokei ha'aretz. That, like Avram Avinu did, to spread an awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to every dark corner of the universe. That there shouldn't be a chayshech, that the oir of Yedias Elokim doesn't shine in there. To spread like we're mispala, like we know about Asid Lavai, umala ha'aretz deya es Hashem. That the Yedias Hashem should fill the Oretz. We don't ignore the Oretz, but we shine the light of Yedias Hashem on every corner of the Oretz. And the original, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set it up is that would be the shutfus of the two brothers. Hevel is the Rayet Tzayin. He's not nichnas into the Oivei HaKaira of dealing with the Adama, of dealing with the darkness. He focuses on the Hevel, on the Ruchnis. He focuses on the clarity of the Ratzon Hashem. Cain takes upon himself a job that's a very, very hard job. To try to bring Ratzon Hashem out of the Karkash, or Eira Ra Hashem. It's a very, very difficult job. Hevel brings Mibachayros Tzainai. It's easier for him. It's easier for him to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with clarity, with Hider Mitzvah, with Mibachayros Tzainai Umechel Behem. Some are even medayik that Cain brought the first karbanos, because it says v'hevel hevi gam hu. It's machlokes rishonim, but some say even that it was Cain's idea. Hevel was more matzliach. When Cain was bitzar that he wasn't as matzliach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him lama charalach v'lama naflu panecha haloyim teitiv se'es. If you'll continue, keep at it. If you'll continue se'es, the Ramban learns me you'll be even higher than Hevel, because it's a harder job. Your expectation is too high. It's not going to go as quickly as with Hevel. Cain, of course, was not oimid in that nisayin, and what happened. And then we find a similar mahalach we find with Yaakov and Esav. The Shloah HaKadosh says mefurish that the relationship, that the way that Cain and Hevel existed in the world was similar to the way Yaakov and Esav existed in the world. Yaakov is the Ish Tom Yoshev Vayhalim. Yaakov secludes himself in the Beis Hashem. He's isolated from the world. He's involved in clarifying the Ratzon Hashem on the highest levels. And Esav is an Ish Sadeh, just like Cain is an Oved Adama. Esav is an Ish Sadeh, and Esav is the one that has the capacity to connect the Kedusha and the Ratzon Hashem. The Yaakov is Megala to connect that to the whole world. Esav, of course, instead of spreading the Ratzon Hashem throughout Olam Hazeh, Esav detaches Olam Hazeh. Esav detaches Olam Hazeh from the world of Ruchnius, and he just indulges and tries to draw, to be goyref, to suck out from Olam Hazeh for his own gratification. And that causes that Yaakov goes into Yitzchak and takes the Bechayra. Because the Bechayra, and takes the Brachos. Because the Brachos was supposed to be given to the one that's going to be the Oved Adama. V'yitein l'cha Elokim mital hashamayim u'bishmanei haaretz. That was supposed to... Yitzchak knew that Esav was an Ish Sadeh. He just, because Kitzayed B'Piv, because he was Tzad Oisai Be'imrei Piv, he didn't chap that Esav wasn't interested in being Makarev the Sadeh to the Ratzon Hashem, because he was fooled. But what he was not fooled about was the tafkid of Esav. In fact, my Rosh Yeshiva taught us that when Yaakov went into Esav, and he said what seems like a bald-faced lie. He said, Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha, with the ganze Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha, that it wasn't a lie at all. Yaakov Avinu was telling Yitzchak. Yitzchak didn't realize that that's what he was telling him. But Yaakov Avinu was telling Yitzchak, until now I thought I was going to do Yaakov and he was going to do Esav. But now I realize that I have to do Yaakov, and I also have to do Esav. And this has to do, I don't have time now, we're not going to get to where we need to get, but this has to do specifically with the Bechar, Anochi Esav b'chayrecha. Maybe another time we'll go there, but not for today. So Yaakov goes in to Yitzchak, and he says, Anochi Esav b'chayrecha. That was the truth, because he was taking the mantle of Esav as well. He was doing the Esav role. He's here to do the Esav role as well. And with that, he went out to the Beis Lavan. Yudal Shana Beis Medrash Al Shem Ve'ever, which, if you remember that shir, it fits beautifully with this. And this was a time now for him to deal with the Chayshech. Okay, just a Maramakim. And then from there to the Beis Lavan, and he built a mishpacha. But Lamaisa, he didn't yet have karka. He didn't actually yet have karka. He didn't actually yet fully take on the role of Esav. Reb Tzaddik says in the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach that when Yaakov sent messengers to Esav, he wasn't stam trying to be mefayas him, he was offering him his job back. And that's why he called him Adoni, because of the gadlus of what Esav could be. Koi Soimrun la Adoni la Esav. He was offering Esav his job back. Now it makes so much sense that he told Esav, don't worry that I took the brachos. Abba Omar li mital hashamayim u'mishmanei haaretz. But don't worry, because I don't have yet. I'm still doing the Royet Tzayin part of the job. I'm still just doing the Hevel part of the job. The Kayin part of the job I haven't fully taken yet. So there's room now, Esav, for you to still join me b'shutfus. Esav, of course, refuses that. And as soon as Esav leaves, there's no longer a choice. Yaakov Avinu has to step into the full role of Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha, and Vayiken es Chelkas Hasada. Immediately afterwards, he buys the Chelkas Hasada. That's the Mahalach here. Now think about it. Of all the children of Yaakov Avinu, the one that most clearly took that legacy of shining the light into the darkest places in the world was Yosef HaTzadik. The Shvatim, they stayed in Eretz Yisrael. They stayed in the Beis Medrash with their father. It was Yosef who went out to Galus. It was Yosef who was thrown into a bar. It was Yosef who was in jail. It was Yosef who took the malchus of the most deplorable, dark place in the world. And what does Yosef tell his father? when he reveals himself to his brothers, he tells his father, he tells them, go and tell my father, es kol kvoidi asher b'Mitzrayim. As I told some boys this week, Yaakov is not interested that Yosef should be the Time Magazine Man of the Year. Es kol kvoidi asher b'Mitzrayim. Clearly, he was talking about richtige kavod. Kvoidi is nishmasi. Right? L'chein samach libi vayogel kvoidi. Ura kvoidi. Tell my father that I expressed myself in Mitzrayim. That I brought values to Mitzrayim. That I was mekarev them to your avodah. On whatever level he was able to do that. That I impacted Mitzrayim in a way that I brought the of Hashgachas Hashem into Mitzrayim. It must be what it means, because it can't mean anything else. Tell my father, es kol kvoidi asher b'Mitzrayim v'es kol asher ra'isem sham. Because then you explain to Yaakov that I did that job, that legacy, that Kayin job that he had. I did it. That's what you should tell my father. Yaakov Avinu comes down to Mitzrayim, and before he dies, he gives Yosef a matana, a shchem echad al chaverecha. What's that shchem echad al chaverecha? What does he give his son Yosef? What did Yosef do more than the other brothers? He took upon himself that job of Kayin. So he buries him, as the pasuk says, mefurish. Where is Yosef HaTzadik buried? In that field. That field that Yaakov Avinu bought. B'meya kasita. From Chamor, as the pasuk says, from Chamor. That pasuk, that kinyan of a sada that represents the knisa into the avodah of Kayin, that's vayikberu Osai. That's where they bury Yosef. That's Yosef's shchem echad alachecha. That's why he's buried there. Oh, asher lokachti miyado emoiri, that I took from Esav. Yeah, it doesn't mean he had a tug of war with Esav, but wasn't that Esav opting out of that avodah, and buying that field was taking that from Esav? Asher lokachti biyado emoiri, with my avodah, b'tzlaisi u'b'ba'usi, with my avodah, I took that from Esav. Asher lokachti miyado emoiri. And that's why he's called Emoiri here. Because why did he have to steal it from Esav? Because he was tzayed befiv. Because Yitzchak thought that Esav should do that job. So Dafka here, when he's explaining that this is the makom that I took from Esav, he calls him Emoiri, that he was tzad aviv be'imrei piv. But as we explained, the job of Klal Yisrael is never one of these two jobs. It's always both. Since then, it's always both. And Memela, Yosef HaTzadik tells his brothers, I was sent down to Mitzrayim. I was sent down to be the Melech, to deal with the Chayshech. You need to set up a yeshiva. You need to isolate yourselves. Tell Paroi that Roye Tzoyin Hayu Avodecha Minu Ureinu. You're the Hevel here. Because Klal Yisrael could never have just Kayin or just Hevel. We need that to be the Loim Dei Torah. We need there to be the people that are isolated and insulated and set aside, that they're in a makom for themselves, where they're just bringing the Dvar Hashem down into this world. And we need that. So Yosef HaTzadik is doyeg that the Achei Yosef should continue what they were doing in Eretz Yisrael. Tell say, Roye Tzoyin Hayu Avodecha Min Ureinu V'ad Ota. Like Onos al pi hadibur, I mamash feel Onos al pi hadibur. I want to share something with you. Is that okay? Can I share something? You were here Shabbos Chanukah, I think. Were you here also? What? You weren't here. You were here. I want to show you how what we talked about Shabbos Chanukah is be'etzem this conversation, even though we didn't say a single word about this conversation. want to share something with you, just to show you how important, how big this topic is. I'm not going to say everything I want to say. I'm going to say a little bit, and then we'll bring it back to what it's negea for us. But I have to share it. Okay, we're still being mushba from the Iris of Chanukah. And it's important as we go into Asara B'Teves and as we start dealing with the Chayshech that we remember that we started off that Rosh Chodesh Teves was Chanukah. The Rambam says that after the Nitzachon over the Yevanim, He'emidu melech min ha-kohanim. As I state, He'emidu melech min ha-kohanim v'chazra malchus li-Yisrael. Now, you know that the Ramban holds that was an Aveira. Right? The Ramban in this week's parasha, the Ramban says on the Yosef Shevet mi Yehuda, the Ramban holds it was an Aveira for the Chashmonaim to take the malchus. Yesh Oimrim from this Lashon Rambam, there are those who tied it that the Rambam holds that it was not an Aveira. Like he's announcing as part of the Nitzachon, the Hamidu Melech min ha-kohanim. It certainly sounds from the Rambam that this was a specific, definitive thing that the Hashmonaim did. The Hamidu Melech. The Hamidu Mehem Melech. No, there's a definitive thing the Chashmonaim did. The Hamidu Melech min ha-kohanim. The Chazra Malchus li Yisrael. I want to say something. In a sense, Yavan also carries a potential to do some of that job of Anochi Esav B'chayrecha. How do I have a right to say such a thing? Because it's a pasuk. Because the pasuk says, Yafta lekim li yefes, v'yishkoin be'olei shem. And Chazal darshan, Yaf yifusay shel yefes, be'olei shem. For that reason, the Mishnah says in Shkolim, according to one Manda Amar, at least in the Mishnah, that it's not that the three kupos in the Mishkan that were filled with machzas hashekels. I'm not going to get into now why machzas hashekels, but that were filled with machzas hashekels, said on them Aleph, Beis, Gimel. You remember the Mishnah, but rather the kupos said on them Alpha, Beta, Gamla, as I state in Mishnah. Why? Zok the Mefarshei HaMishnah. Yafta lekim liyefes v'yishkoin ba'ol le'shem Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Megillah Daf Tes. The only language that you're allowed to be metargim the Torah into is Yavanis, because that's the beautiful language. What's the vart? The vart is that the Torah is for us, but there's also an element of being melamed the Dvar Hashem to the world, and the vehicle to be melamed the Dvar Hashem to the world is through Yavan. You see that parallel there of Yavan doing some of the job. If Yavan would do their job, which they chose not to, but had Yavan chosen to do their job, they could have been, instead of severing Olam Hazeh from an Olam Ruchni, which is what they were determined to do, instead of separating and denying and crushing any connection between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, had they chosen to, they could have taken the beauty of what they appreciate to be a klei kibul for the Ratzon Hashem. Yaf yifusay shel yefes ba'olei shem. Yeah? But they chose not to do that. And therefore, Klal Yisrael can no longer contract out Kavod Shamayim. All Kavod Shamayim comes from us. We're not contracting out Kavod Shamayim anymore. Good? Now, we know, we've learned many times, the Drasha Saran in Simin Yud Aleph. Drasha Yud Aleph. The Rashiva shared with us many times. You know what I'm talking about? Right? That the Iran says that there's a difference between the Melech and the Sanhedrin. That the Melech, let's start with the Sanhedrin. That the Sanhedrin is here to learn Torah. B'lishkas hagazas, ki mitzia in teitzei Torah. To learn Torah, to implement the Torah, to make takanas, to paskin on dinei Torah. That's the job of the Sanhedrin. The Melech is here to implement the Divrei Rishos of the nation. That's why the pasuk says, "Osima alai Melech kechol hagoyim." It's not a bad thing. All goyim need a Melech to be able to raise taxes and build tunnels and do all those things. And we also need a melech, except our melech is different. And that's why our melech, David Melech Yisrael, Chai V'Kayim, our melech is the man who said, V'libi chalal v'kirbi, that he had none of his own ritzanos in him. He was dead. He only carried the Ratzon Hashem. Because we know that to be Makayim, to Divrei Rishus, to be able to be Makayim, to properly to run the chitzonius of the nation, it comes from a Yanika, from the Pnimius of the nation. That Al Pi the Ratzon Hashem, and Al Pi what Klal Yisrael is holding by. That's how that's how we fear the nation. Okay, so in a sense, this Yaakov and Esav that we both are could be explained as Yaakov being the Sanhedrin and Esav being the Melech. Right? You see that, right? That relationship. Okay? I want to say that the Kashmanoim felt that it was important to Shtel Avek. We're not contracting out Kavod Shamayim anymore. And the same one who has to be the Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ehalim, that same nation needs to also be the Anochi Esav B'chayrecha. And therefore there was a determined thing. Listen to the Lashon. The He'emidu Melech min HaKohanim. The Kohen is the Shofet. El HaKohen Oyel HaShofet Asher Yeh Vayomim Hahem. You hear the Lashon? The He'emidu Melech min HaKohanim. That was the protest. Adkan. We don't contract out Kavod Shamayim anymore. We do it. The Chazra Malchus li Yisrael. And the Malchus came back to Klal Yisrael. Asher Alken. You can see why I couldn't hold back, right? So, Asher Alken, it's important to realize in two Oifanim, Halacha L'maisa. Number one is to understand that in Klal Yisrael, we need all of our Shvatim. We need there to be parts of Klal Yisrael. We cannot descend into the childishness of trying to choose who's right among the Shiftei Yisrael, because we need all the Shvatim. We need the Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Halims. We need the Anochi Esav B'chayrechas. We need the Kayin, and we need the Melech, and we need all of those things. And it's important for us to be broad-minded in the sense that we recognize that Kavod Shamayim is sophisticated, and we need to be a sophisticated nation to implement Kavod Shamayim. That's Aleph. What's more Nageya specifically for us to know is that we have to see in our own lives. There are some people that have the schus that they sit Yom V'Layla and they learn Torah. For people like that, they know their makom. Their makom is Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ehalim. Do they ever have moments of Anochi Esav B'chayrecha? Of course, you can't be in this world and not have moments of that. They interact with an outside world. They even having a mishpacha in some way is extending out, and then and interacting with people and shopping in a store and dealing with a policeman and paying taxes and all those things are also part of that. But the ikr thing is the Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ehalim. What's important to realize is the other way around. That those of us that have to spend more time on the Anochi Esav B'chayrecha out in the world and focusing on the Kavod Shamayim part of it, we have to recognize that even within us, there needs to be parts of Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ehalim. There has to be protected parts of ourselves that are isolated from everything else and are just focused on Kavod Shamayim. One easy way to think about it in our minds is maybe the Sheishes Yomim Ta'avoid could be focused on Anochi Esav B'chayrecha. But Yom Hashvi Shabbos L'Hashem Elokecha, that's my Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Ehalim. And an Eved Hashem needs to be able to balance both. Once a person is out in the world, for him to let go, and it's a tragic thing when it happens, and it makes it impossible to do the Anochi Esav B'chayrecha properly. The only people that are successful on the tzad of the Ish Sadeh, the tzad of Anochi Esav B'chayrecha, the tzad of the Melech, is if there's also Minach Kohanim involved. If there's also a chelik that a person can once again get lost in a sugya, where a person can find a yishuv adas and a menucha to be alone with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To be alone. Like one of my father told me, b'shem one of his rabbeim that was a big Bal Yisurim. And he told my father once, my father asked him like how he's able to function. And he told my father, when I open a Gemara, there are three things in the entire world. There's me, There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's the line of Gemara that I'm learning. Halavai, we should be Zeicha L'kach Yashikayach.